It is time to talk Icebreaker by Stephen William Hanna. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is all about Icebreaker by Stephen William Hanna. This is book 1 in the Interloper trilogy. Before we jump into the review today, make sure you check in the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord should you want to come along for the ride. Now, Icebreaker was one of my favorite reads of 2023. This was a deliciously atmospheric, cosmic horror sci-fi blend that had me yelling, why aren't we adapting indie books? Why are we going after the same crap in Hollywood and not picking up something like this? Because it was fantastic. We, as the reader, are immediately dropped into a suspense-filled, anxiety-riddled situation when we meet Dr. Bear. He is a young man of science and he's called to a house of a desperate father wanting to know if there's any way to save his dying son. Bear goes into the house, he asks a few questions before donning sensory blockers, telling Simon, who is the father, if he doesn't come out to set the house on fire and leave. This is our first introduction to this world, and already it's terrifying. Should the worst happen, Simon is told to alert the forestry authority once he is clear of the building and take himself to an underground bunker. Bunkers in this world are commonplace since the cataclysm tore through the world almost a century beforehand. The young man in the bunker, the son of Simon, has experienced something called the phenomenon, and he is sick, sicker than most get to at this point. But there is no saving this young man. The boy is going to die, and for his sake, we can only hope it is sooner rather than later. As we go further into the story, we discover that someone is trying to actually summon this phenomenon, which is so terrifying and so devastating for the town's populations. They are trying to break into town and kill those who could warn them of its survival. Inside their walls and their towns, they are safe from exposure to this phenomenon, but Bear will have to travel outside of them if he has any chance of saving the next town, or even the town after that, from the devastating effects of Guy's messenger, and to do it he'll need a crew, and that's where the Icebreaker comes in. Guy calls, and she wants to see you in hell. Open your eyes, open your ears, and see if you have what it takes to survive. This book was creepy, and it was awesome. I had such a good time with this, and I can't wait to continue on with the series. I don't know if that's been said enough already, but my socks were knocked off. This is the type of book that gets me excited as a reader. It is a unique blend of genres that creates something truly special and had me on the edge of my seat the entire way through. This author has chops. This writing was tight, it was action heavy, it was character driven, and it was suspenseful. I cannot count the number of times Icebreaker gave me physical goosebumps on my skin where I was like, ugh. That is the only way that I can describe how this book made me feel. The prose and the pacing in Icebreaker were definitely the standouts for me here. The author has chosen their words very carefully. From chapter 1, the reader is completely sucked in to the mystery of what the hell is happening in this world. It's creepy, but you can't help needing to know more at every turn of the page. The chapters of this book start short and snappy, and then they build as the book progresses, which also works well to build the suspension of the story itself for me as the reader. When the chapters start to get longer towards the middle and the end of this book, I was finding myself really not wanting them to end, but I was also impatient to see what fresh hell this book was going to throw out at us as we made our way through. I also really appreciated the horror elements that were in this book, the sequences of the horror elements, although it was the same entity that was creating it, they never felt repetitive. We learnt about the phenomenon relatively slowly, but in a way that made it all the more skin-crawly each and every time it was discussed. Icebreaker also was the perfect length, so the author really knew when to cut off this story in order to want the reader to jump into the next one pretty much straight away. It allowed it to hold the suspense and build in such a way that the reader, or me, I'm going to talk for myself here, is desperately wanting more. So in 281 pages, this book could easily be adapted into something fantastic on the silver screen or even the big screen. I think it would take a full-length feature to capture all the little details that were hidden in such a short book, and I think being able to do that is absolutely incredible. As far as the story elements go in Icebreaker, I personally can't really fault anything from my own reading tastes. Even the world building was excellent for such a short novel, which is sometimes, if you're going to have a shorter novel, something that falls by the wayside, but not here. This world was riddled with the effects of the cataclysm, and like the rest of the story, we got these in small snippets which continually progressed over the time we were reading it. We were privy to some of the older technologies that were being used and being utilized, how people survived, how people were traveling between the towns if they could afford passage, what they needed to rely on to live, and the building up of towns for the survival of their population. And the list just goes on here. The world was so carefully crafted that any question the reader may come up with, and I came up with a few, were answered along the way. I didn't have any questions by the end of this book. I was left wanting for nothing. Doing this while not compromising on character work or plot elements was, for lack of a better term, phenomenal. And no, there was no pun intended there. Icebreaker has definitely put this author on the map for me, to the point where I'm struggling not to drop everything and just finish off the trilogy and then read everything else that this person has put out. I can't wait to see what happens next, and I hope some of you go ahead and pick it up. Let me know if you're going to pick up Icebreaker, and if you've read it, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Try and keep it spoiler-free for people who haven't read it yet. If you like the content, give it one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.